Hi everyone. I think I'm live. I can see on Instagram over here I'm live. On Facebook over here, I really hope I'm live because I am not 100% sure. So fingers crossed. But I wanted to say hi everyone and welcome to the Freelance Mama episode 2 of my live show. I'm so pleased that you were able to make it along today to this week's episode. I hope you're all keeping really well and that everything is nice and safe and enjoyable in your bubbles. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Kelly. I'm from the Freelance Mama, and I help mums to launch freelance businesses so that they can work from home using the skills that they already have. Hopefully this sounds like something that you're interested. I think that's probably why you're here today. So let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about how to create win-win relationships between yourself and your freelance clients. And I also want to talk about why I think that is super important right now. But before you get started, I just want to remind you that the whole purpose of these lives is for us to be able to teach you a little bit about freelancing. And it's kind of like a little mini coaching session. So I'd really invite you to jump in, ask questions, drop me a comment, and I will either comment if I see it live or I'll come back later on and leave you a comment as well. So today I wanted to talk about this topic about creating win-win relationships because I think that one of the greatest things about freelancing is the flexibility that it provides us, but also it provides great flexibility to our clients. Now, that's part of the way we can create win-win relationships is providing some flexibility both ways. And I think freelancing, like most relationships really, works the best when there is some flexibility both ways. Now, I think probably a lot of you have it pretty clear in your head the kinds of work that you're going to be doing. And often, one of the great things about freelancing is that we do get to pick and choose the kinds of things we do. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, say, for example, if you have a client that needs some extra help, that might not be the kind of thing that you normally do or might not be the kind of work that you're normally interested in. And I wonder whether you do it. Now, I think that's quite an interesting question. Would you do it if it meant that it was something you don't really like to do? And what about if you would you do it if it was something that you might get paid slightly less than what you normally would do? Now, that's a really interesting question, I think, because I think for a lot of people, our immediate reaction might be to say no, but I want to talk a little bit about why you might actually want to reconsider. Because a lot of the time, the people who we're working with as freelancers are small business owners themselves, and they might go through times when they need some extra little help that may not necessarily be exactly what you're wanting to do. But even if it's not your ideal work or not your ideal pay, I do think there's something to be said for having a bit of flexibility in these kind of situations. I want to give you a little bit of an example based around one of the client relationships that I have. Now, I have this client who I work for on a regular basis and provide legal support work, which is my main kind of work that I do. Now, that same client just recently needed some help with some admin kind of work. And I asked if I was able to help her to find somebody to do that. Now, this kind of work isn't something that I would, as my main source of work, my main type of work that I do. But when I wasn't able to find somebody at an appropriate rate for this client, it turned out that it actually worked really well for both of us, for me to do that work in a lot of ways, because it helped me to get to know that particular file really well. And it also meant that the client was able to get the job done nice and quickly with somebody who she knew. And I think it's a really great example of being able to show that you can do a bit of give and take in this sort of freelance relationship. And so yes, for me, that was at a slightly lower rate than what I normally would be getting paid. But it's extra work at a time when perhaps there isn't as much work going around. And I think that it's a really good opportunity. And I think that it's really helpful to maintain that kind of relationship. It gives me extra work, it provides some flexibility for my client, and it just builds a stronger relationship altogether. So this kind of thing means that we have a win-win relationship, and I hope that you can see some of the ways that would potentially work in your area as well. For me, the admin work that I'm doing provides me with a little bit of extra income. It solves my client's problem and it builds a stronger ongoing relationship between us. Now, what I'm not saying is that you should discount your rates all the time. I don't recommend that. And I'm not necessarily saying that you should do a lot of work that you don't enjoy. But what I am saying is that from time to time, it can be really helpful for both you and for your clients if you're able to provide that sort of level of flexibility. Creating win-win relationships can go even further than this. Sometimes it's about providing flexibility in terms of timing. It might mean that you're only able to work certain times of the day. Like, say, for example, if you can only work in the evenings because you've got kids around in the day. I think a lot of people are doing that at the moment. It's a lot harder to get work done in the daytime with the kiddies home. But you might be able to commit to getting work done overnight, for example. Now, I've heard of this being working really well for people who, say, have clients who are not on their time zone. They might be overseas. So, say if you live in New Zealand, and it might be it's nighttime here, but it might be daytime where your client is, then you can create a win-win there, perhaps. Or it could be that you do work for someone in New Zealand who works a regular 9 to 5, and then you're able to do the work overnight, turn it around and get it back to them the next morning. And again, you're creating a win-win relationship there. Sometimes, as I've experienced this myself, is that creating win-win can be being in the right place at the right time. Now, for me, some of the work that I've done has meant that I've had to travel to meetings, or perhaps to even go out of town for a day or two, sometimes longer. And initially, when I was offered this work, I thought, well, this isn't really going to work for me because I'm the primary child giver for our kids. And normally I'm the one that does the pickups and the drop-offs and that kind of thing. But I wanted to make this relationship work. And to be able to make that work, I did have to be able to provide a certain level of flexibility. And so to make that work, I had to talk to my husband, had to arrange a babysitter so that we could make the timing work, so that I could have someone to pick up the kids and drop off the kids when I wasn't there, or to mind them until my husband got home from work. And I think, again, that being able to provide this type of flexibility for me has meant that I've been able to take on jobs that have led to ongoing work that I wouldn't have been able to get if I hadn't have been able to provide that sort of little bit of flexibility. So it's been a win-win for me and for my client, in that I was able to do what she needed me to do and to be at certain places at certain times. But because of providing that level of flexibility, that's enabled me to get more work on an ongoing basis. And yes, some of that work might involve traveling, but it's also just, again, about providing that level of flexibility. And because of that, it's meant that I've been able to bring in the ongoing work, which for me is really important in providing some certainty moving forward. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well is that once you know somebody and you've been working in your business, there's often lots of other ways that you can help them than what you might initially have been thinking about, because you do get to know their business quite intimately. You get to know them and you get to know their working style. And so you can create win-wins there. And if you're able to be the person who's able to help them, or at least source some help for them, then they're going to remember that. And that's, again, going to pay off for you in the long run, either with referrals perhaps, or maybe it might just be them bringing you more jobs to do. So I think that sort of flexibility is really important. And as I mentioned in the comments, I think it's going to be really, really important moving forward. I think a lot of people are going to be looking to freelancers moving forward to get support and to get help. And I think especially for the smaller business owners, and probably even some of the bigger business owners as well, they're not going to be able to take on someone full time. I mean, they might normally, or perhaps in the past, they might have had more than one person working for them full time. And they have a range of different jobs they're doing, but they need somebody flexible. They're either no longer able to have somebody on full time, or perhaps they were looking to take somebody on and they aren't able to with the current market, or perhaps not as much work as they have had before all of this craziness happening. And so by being able to provide flexibility to do lots of different types of tasks, you're potentially able to be really, really useful to that client. And again, I think they're going to remember that when the time comes, when they maybe get a bit busier, they might send more work your way, or they might send more of your ideal type of work your way. So I think if you can provide some flexibility for them now, it's going to pay off for you in the long run as well. And I mean, sometimes I think the flexibility, even in the current market, if this is something that can work for you, it might be having a bit of lumpy hours. With one of the clients that I have that provides me with quite a lot of work, I have had periods where there's not been as much work as I might like, and then there's other periods where it's been quite busy. So I've been able to use the downtime to do other things, maybe get things organized around the house, or to get work on the Freelance Mama and that kind of thing in the quieter times, but being able to provide flexibility again when it's really busy and she needs me to do more hours. So that's partly you managing yourself as well and managing your finances, but in terms of the ebbs and flows of work, something like that, having some flexibility there is really helpful as well. As I've mentioned, sometimes it could be covering work that you wouldn't normally do, or maybe taking slightly less pay than you normally would. But again, I really think this flexibility is going to pay off for you in the long run. So when you're thinking about considering freelance work, think about how it can be made into a win-win. Whatever it is that you're looking at doing, think about how you can create wins for you and wins for your client. And I think it's really important as well to be upfront about some of the conversations in terms of maybe if traveling's not right for you, is there another way you can do it? Or just in terms of timing and those kinds of things, like have those conversations, because perhaps something that you think might not work, you can create a win-win in another way. So talk to your freelance clients about it. I know you might be nervous about doing that, but I mean, they might have things that help to balance that out as well. So definitely have those conversations. And that's really about all that I wanted to talk to you about today in terms of that. I mean, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them below in the comments. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I did want to let you know as well that I have another episode coming out on Friday. And I wanted to talk on Friday about how freelance life can be a bit messy and why that's totally okay. Now, you might think that's a bit funny because I know people like to have the perfect, I know. I'm thinking about a conversation I had with someone recently, but when you are having meetings with clients, you want it to be really professional, and that's so right. But I also wanted to just show you, because freelance life is not always clean and tidy. There can be, kids around, and there can be piles of laundry around, but I wanted to just talk to you a bit about that and how sometimes it can get messy, but it can all still work for you. So I really hope you have a lovely day. I'm going to just quickly jump in and see if there's any questions. I can't see the questions, I'm afraid, on Facebook, so I will jump in afterwards and answer any questions if there are. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you on Friday. Bye, everybody.